This is our community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor for the District of North Vancouver, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here to the regular meeting of Council for Monday, February 27th at 7 o'clock. At this point, just before we adopt the agenda, I would ask Councillor Hanson to read our land acknowledgement.
We respectfully acknowledge the original peoples of these lands and waters, specifically the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam, on whose unceded ancestral lands the District of North Vancouver is located. We value the opportunity to learn, share, and serve our community on these unceded lands.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Council, an agenda has been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will somebody please move adoption of the agenda? I have Councillor Ma, seconded by Councillor Back. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Council, I have several sets of minutes that have been circulated with the package, 3 different dates, January 31st, February 7th, and February 13th. Are there any errors or omissions from those 3 sets of minutes as presented? Hearing none, will somebody move all 3 sets of minutes? Moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Ma. Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Sorry, I'm getting a bit of feedback here. Wonderful. I will just state that this meeting is being held in a hybrid format, which means that members of the council, the public, and staff may be participating through in-person or virtual means. As noted up here, we have Councillor Forbes joining us virtually this evening, so you have the full council participating directly in the meeting here tonight. But as we go through public input, you may have people participating virtually or in person as well. And so at the front end of each regular meeting of council, we reserve a period of up to 30 minutes in order for members of the public to raise matters of interest to them. And we do start with a speakers list that the clerk's department creates ahead of time. At this point, I have 4 public speakers on regular agenda items and 4 additional speakers on non-agenda items tonight. We probably have about enough time for about 10, so I will come back to the room to see if there's anyone else wanting to be added to the list at the end of that time. But we're going to start with Kelly Bond, followed by Bev Parslow, Renee Gorley, and Keith Reynolds. So Kelly Bond joining us here in person. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Kelly Bond, 400 Block Seville Crescent. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to urge your support for Councillor Murray's motion to lobby the province on tenant rights. In her book, Vital Little Plans, Jane Jacobs stated, the widespread uprooting of people and disintegration of city neighborhoods exact vast and mounting social costs. Council, unless we find better solutions to affordably rehouse low, mid, and moderate income renters who are displaced, the costs for our province will continue to mount. Local governments make land use decisions by authority of the Local Government Act. When these decisions displace renters from their affordable homes for for-profit developments, accommodating them in the new buildings at comparably affordable rents must be made into provincial law. Community Charter Statute 8.3 states that a council may impose requirements in relation to health, safety, and protection of persons and property. The same charter declares in Statute 2 that the province recognizes municipalities require adequate powers and discretion to address existing and future community needs. Municipalities do not currently have adequate power through provincial law to protect tenants. They must be granted such. Your approval of agenda item 8.9 tonight would reflect a strong voice for people over profits and for the inherent need to put the human right of housing above the commodification and investment opportunities of housing. And while you wait to learn fate of this lobby, perhaps you might revisit the return rent provision of our own policy. The City of Burnaby has established that returning tenants be offered return rents at their evicted rental rate. At public hearings, we hear family and friends of applicants declare excitedly the proposed property would be ideal for them, and that's excellent. More homes for diverse households is laudable goal of our OCP, but when those new homes result in the permanent displacement of a majority of the original renters, the process leaves a substantial gap in the municipality's social tapestry, which you as decision makers are charged with knitting together. Displaced low-income tenants are a priority concern. Minimum and maximum income qualifications for off-markets may not allow them a home in the new build, and middle-income earners anticipate market rental rates for the year of occupancy. Yesterday, I stumbled upon a market home that was two-bedroom, $4,500 a month for a two-bedroom in a 2021 rental complex. Staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but my math says that's affordable to a household making $185,000 a year. I assure you, not one evicted tenant in an older purpose-built rental have that income level. A fair return rent provision could be a legacy piece of your decision-making this term, ensuring new, healthy, secure, purpose-built rental housing has room for everyone, including all displaced tenants. Council, thank you for the chance to share my thoughts. Good luck with your pursuit of a delegation of authority from the province on tenant rights. Tenants everywhere will be rooting for you.
Thank you very much, Kelly Bond. Next speaker I have is Bev Parslow, followed by Renee Gorley. And Bev is joining us here in person. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Members of council, I would like to support the motion presented tonight on the subject of traffic calming on Delbrook. First of all, I'd like to thank Steve Carney in engineering for the work so far. He's been able to provide flashing lights at the 3 crosswalks, worked on the bump out at Evergreen, and also lined the top part of Delbrook. Speeding on Delbrook is the issue. As stated so many times to this council, there are over 800 cars a day going over 65. On the weekends, it's even worse. The RCMP is overstretched in terms of resources. Last year, 26 speeding tickets were given over the year, which is less than 2 a month. The speed boards that you have supplied have been really useful. Speeds of 80, quite often found on an evening, say 7, 8 o'clock. Speeds of 80 are quite normal. On one occasion, we had a top speed of 101 kilometers an hour, and that was at the bottom of Delbrook. The council, you've been given all the data on the numbers of cars speeding. Well, you have the data. What about support from the community? Well, it is a residential road. Traffic calming has the support of all the families in 3381, 4033, 4245, 3647, 4313, 3241, 3532. I have a complete list for you, and this was a petition that I gave you last year. Well, when we spoke to the people on Delbrook, the residents of Delbrook, we found that in fact, 95% of the people we contacted were requesting some form of traffic calming. Basically, there are 2 questions. Is there speeding on Delbrook? Yes, most certainly. Is there a public request for such a change? Most certainly. Also, my wife would appreciate this being passed, as the list of jobs to do at home is getting longer. I do realize that there are requests and the budget is tight. However, we really need to get the project started. The problem will not go away. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for your comments, Bev Parslow. The next speaker I have is Renee Gorley, followed by Keith Reynolds. Welcome, Renee. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for having me back again. My name is Renee Gorley. I live at 686 St. Ives Crescent, and I'm here talking on behalf of the Delbrook Community Association this evening. As I say, I live on St. Ives Crescent, and from where I live, I can stand at the bottom of my driveway and look across Delbrook Avenue and see the entrance to Mosquito Creek. It's 12 steps to get across Delbrook. And but at the end of St. Ives, there's a curve. And so actually I can only see about 40 meters down Delbrook if I go to cross. If I ever encountered the Schumacher wannabe that Bev saw going 101, that would give me 1.8 seconds to get across Delbrook. It's pretty far to go in 1.8 seconds. It's really far if you're towing a 13-year-old Springer or a 6-year-old. We've been asking for something to be done about Delbrook for ages, and as Bev points out, Engineering and Steve Carney have been very supportive with individual items. But the traffic continues to be a problem. It's getting heavier. It's never been slow, never been faster. It just doesn't slow down at all. The street that bisects our community has a profound effect on the community, not just because someone could get hurt, but because it means that a parent doesn't feel safe letting their kid out to go and buy a popsicle. That's across the street from where I live and from where most people in Delbrook live. The nearest popsicle stand is across Delbrook. It means that you can't go to the park alone. So this feature of our community is having a profound effect and a long-term effect on the quality of life and the health of all of our residents. So I implore you to make it happen and have a complete plan that is going to engineer away the need for enforcement, because we can't do the enforcement. 26 tickets in a year, that's a joke. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Renee Gourlay. The next speaker I have is Keith Reynolds, followed by Genevieve Noel. Keith Reynolds is joining us here in person. Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. I'm here to speak to the same issue that the previous two speakers have been speaking on. And what I want to give are my personal observations of Delbrook. I mean, your own reports have said that basically it is a street that's the width of a highway where there's virtually no parking, and it's in many cases treated as a highway. It's on a steep hill, and people start off at the top of Delbrook and accelerate all the way down. There are people at the top of Delbrook in particular, and particularly for the people who live on the side streets. For anyone trying to get off their side street and make a turn either left or right when a car is coming down that hill at 80 kilometers an hour or 100 kilometers an hour, or even 65 kilometers an hour, is a very dangerous situation. The previous speaker talked about the kids, and one of my observations is I really appreciate the flashing lights that you've put in. They're a big help. But strangely enough, one thing that it doesn't help with is drivers ignoring children. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen kids standing at a flashing light while cars drive past them. If it's an adult, they'll stop. But so many times I've seen kids at those flashing lights standing there waiting while car after cars go through. I would just really encourage any of you who have the time to just go and maybe spend some time on Delbrook and have a look at it. And if I may just quickly throw in one other issue, and I apologize for that. I live at 600 West Windsor Road, across the street from where the demolition is going forward with the park, which we hope will be coming. A policeman came to my door the other day and told me that there had been someone who had, the word he used was broken in. It's inappropriate because there is no reason to break in. That fence is not a real fence. They vandalized the equipment and they threw oil around. I don't know whether the oil was contaminated, but I think oil is a contaminant. I hope that you would look at this issue and consider speaking with your contractor who has no security patrols at night. And finally, there is a large street light in the old parking lot that used to be for the building there. For some reason, that street light has been disconnected. If that street light alone were on, it would put light into that area, which would discourage vandals from coming in. So if anything you can do on those two issues, and particularly the real danger on Delbrook.
At the upper parking lot or the lower parking lot?
Upper parking lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you, Keith Reynolds. Next speaker I have is Genevieve Noel, followed by Diane McQueen. And Genevieve Noel is joining us virtually this evening. Welcome. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You have 3 minutes to address the council, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Genevieve Noel. I live on St. Paul's Avenue, Upper Lonsdale. I'm echoing what has been said earlier, but about another area of our lovely city. I wanted to talk about pedestrian safety and see how, in the District of North Vancouver, we can ensure safety for pedestrians, facilitate connectivity between neighborhoods, promoting a healthy lifestyle, reducing the numbers of cars on the road. So if we improve connectivity and walkability of the neighborhood, we reduce traffic, which is a big issue in North Vancouver. And it also happens to help abating the climate crisis. I wanted to bring your attention to the Lonsdale Avenue. Everybody knows that people drive way too fast on Lonsdale Avenue. There's even monitoring that shows your speed and trying to get people to slow down. Lonsdale at its upper limit meets with Mount Royal, and there's a very sharp elbow bend there. I live right above there and I hear tires screeching, especially in the evening in that area. If you haven't been in that area, I wanted to introduce you to the Stair to Nowhere. This is a stair we use, me and my children, twice a day, along with dozens of children and people trying to commute. So if you look at the stairs, there's no sidewalks. It just ends up on the street. And it's well used because it's needed. It's a desire line from the upper neighborhood here. I will show you the image. The stair is right here, and it really links the upper neighborhood of 200 homes to all the schools, local schools, and leisure centers. You have Braemar Elementary, Mountainside Secondary, École André Piola, Delbrook Park, and Delbrook Community Center. So a lot of families use that stairs all the time. There's a lot of, it's well used. So the Stair to Nowhere, hopefully, you know, I've seen quite a few close call myself. That's why even though my kids are old enough to walk on their own every day, I meet them and we walk them across that part of the trajectory because it's just simply too dangerous. I've almost been hit myself and I'm very careful. So God forbid, if anything was ever to happen, if you look at the context, you know, it's really setting people for disaster. There's no sidewalks, nor north nor south. I wanted to provide solutions. So if you look at the possibilities, there's a crossing area right at the end of that pink arrow. So a sidewalk could be installed there, but the sidewalk would be problematic. There's a lot of landscaping, there's trees in the way, there's a bank. So I think it would be very costly to install a sidewalk on the other side. If we look, this is a crossing area. If we look southbound, we could also create another sidewalk there to go to a crossing street below. However, right now there's a series of driveways and it's a very long area, so that would be very costly. So I'm proposing that the most cost-efficient way to address the situation was simply to put a bit of paint, put a few stop signs, and not only create a safe passage for pedestrian, but also have great traffic calming for that area where there's accidents. I've heard there was a car chase last month. So if you see the elbow turn, the stairs is right here. If you have a crosswalk, you have a stop sign here, stop sign there. It would be traffic calming and ensure the safety of our children. Thank you very much for keeping our kids safe.
Thank you for your presentation, Genevieve Noel. Okay, the next speaker I have is Diane McQueen, followed by Rubina Jamal. And I'm not certain if Diane McQueen is joining us in person or virtually. Do we have confirmation from the clerks? Okay, so at this point, I don't see someone that with a name online that looks like Diane McQueen. So I'm going to move on to Rubina Jamal and Will Sherman, and then I'll come back to Diane McQueen at the end there if they've joined us at that point. Okay, so Rubina Jamal, all virtual. Okay, can we make sure Rubina Jamal is moved over? And if you can move Will Sherman over as well, that'd be great.
Waiting for Rubina to accept.
Rubina, if you can hear me, there should be a notice on your screen saying that you accept becoming a panelist. That's the only way we can add you to this part of the meeting. So if you can accept that, please. Okay, is Will Sherman over on the main meeting?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'm going to go to, oh, actually, I do see Rubina Jamal on the main meeting now. Okay, so Rubina Jamal, can you hear me? You are muted. You're muted, yeah. There you go.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome, you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Hello, thank you. My name is Rubina Jamal, and I am the coordinator of the North Shore Table Matters Network. I'm here to reintroduce you to the Table Matters Network and to talk about the North Shore Community Food Charter. Table Matters was established in 2005 and is a network of citizens, organizations, governments, and schools working to support a sustainable food system and food security. Our tagline is infusing food into community dialogue, policy, and life on the North Shore. This year is a milestone for the Community Food Charter, which was developed 10 years ago. The Charter outlines a vision of collaboration for an integrated food system and has been officially endorsed by all the North Shore municipalities, Vancouver Coastal Health, the 2 North Shore First Nations, and school districts. The District of North Vancouver has been a long-standing supporter of food initiatives, including community gardens, beekeeping, and domestic hens, financial assistance to nonprofits that provide meals to vulnerable populations, projects, including a food rescue project that I worked on personally in 2016. At a policy level, the OCP contains a number of statements relating to food systems. And the district has endorsed the Metro Vancouver Regional Food System Action Plan. That was 2016. And more recently, in June of 2022, in response to the climate crisis, increasing food insecurity, and volatility of food supply chains, the district unanimously passed a motion to accelerate action on local food systems, including supporting principles for a food system strategy. Planning for sustainable food systems and food security requires a concerted effort on many levels. The signatories of the Food Charter can play an important role. Table Matters will be hosting an event for elected officials in March to learn more about the Food Charter and discuss future action. We hope that you will all attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Rubina Jamal. The next speaker I have is Will Sherman, joining us virtually. Will Sherman, can you hear me?
I can.
Welcome. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
All right. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you today. I want to request that you do not, it's a budget issue, that the proposed cutting of the 5-year funding for the Spirit Trail East be reconsidered. I'm a Deep Cove resident trying to be a one-car family again. I love cycling. It's my preferred mode of transportation, whether it's just locally to get groceries or cross town or over to Vancouver. And it's the trips to Vancouver that make me realize we kind of got a tale of 2 cities. The trip starts it with like an 8-kilometer cycle on Dollarton Highway. As you know, there's no separation there, sometimes no shoulder at all. You're extremely vulnerable. I guess like Delbrook too, the volume of traffic, the speed, the size of the vehicles, the driver frustration, ever increasing. You're always a couple of feet away from death. And it wasn't this bad before when volume was lower. Cars could kind of pass, you know, if the car's coming up behind you, they could cross into the other lane and pass you. There's even a passing lane at those days. But now with the volume of traffic, they can't. So they've got to squeeze by you really, really tight. It's scary. But when you get to the Vancouver side, kind of everything's cool again, the good place. Lots of separated lanes, a lot of separation. Anyway, it's not just me who's finding it lacking. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. A friend, the Riverside area, Riverside Drive, east of Seymour. I saw them recently and I asked them, why did you come to Deep Cove anymore? Why aren't you dropping in on me? And of course, the answer was parking. I never go to Deep Cove anymore, parking. So I asked them, well, why don't you ride your bike? It's not that far. They said, I tried that once and only once, Mount Seymour Parkway. Scary. I'll never do it again. Another friend, ER doctor at Lionsgate Hospital. I asked him once if he'd like to go for a cycle. We often got together and did some things. He said to me, no, I don't cycle. I said, like, what? Because again, he's like rock climbs, this guy. He says, no, I see too many cyclists at work. So For him, it's out. And it's not really on the North Shore, the hills or the rain, the hills, I mean, e-bikes level those. The rain, you can dress for that. It's when you get into rain and hills with traffic, you know, you don't know if the car behind you has put on their wipers or not, and you don't know if they've, anyway, you're way more vulnerable when the rain is hitting. And, you know, I drive my car quite a bit across town too. I've never once gotten in my car and thought, is this the last trip I make? But it's actually pretty common. I stick with it on the bike, but it's a common one. So that infrastructure is very old. And I think the original Spirit Trail was announced like 15 years ago. And there's been a lot of consultation. We had it in the budget. There was a nice plan for it, but it's all gone now. And it seems like we might have to wait another 5 or 10 years. So I'm just asking you again, no more just quick wins. I know that's the plan. And I know with some of the bicycle projects on the North Shore, there's been some false starts in construction. I mean, there's been some hiccups, but I think with proper consultation, I think you can build the right stuff on Deep Cove. So please, no quick wins, real wins. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your comments, Will Sherman. Now we have, no, you're having feedback?
No, just that, yeah, but don't you hear?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about like electronic feedback on there. I'm not hearing it.
No,
Okay.
The buzzer bit. She's referring to, I think.
Oh, just the beep. Oh, okay.
There's no Diane.
Okay, so staff have double checked. We don't have Diane McQueen listed. I don't see any other hands. Would anybody else here like, oh, I do have a hand here. Yes, come on up. And we also have time for one more speaker after that as well. But welcome.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Makepeace. I'm a resident of Delbrook Avenue, or live at 4260 Delbrook. I am a new resident, so we've just moved to North Vancouver from Alberta, and I want to speak to the traffic calming on Delbrook. I have 3 young children, and I do not let them play in the front of our house by themselves. They, for a while, were taking the city bus to school, and I feel very nervous about them trying to cross the road to go to the bus stop across the street because it's not safe. We live just a few houses down from Hermosa. There's a 4-way stop there, so it shouldn't be like cars should be going fairly slow at that point. They would have just come to a full stop. Unfortunately, people come through that 4-way stop, are going down the hill, and they start accelerating, and it's not safe. Same thing that was discussed earlier, trying to move out of our driveway and onto Delbrook is often a bit of a scary scenario. So I would implore you to think about some options for ways to slow people down on that road. Not unlike the woman, Genevieve, who spoke, simple stop signs might not be something that people would, you know, be happy about, but a few 4-way stops down Delbrook would be an easy, quick, and cheap way to slow people down. It would make me feel a lot safer about having my kids in the neighborhood. I'd like them to play. We came from a neighborhood where there was a lot of community engagement on the street, and I'm not afraid of them being in the community on their own, but because of the traffic and the cars, it is something that I do have concerns with. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I do see another virtual speaker. I have panelist Hazen Colbert. Hazen Colbert, can you hear me? You are muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Welcome.
Yeah.
You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Mayor Little, I've listened to a number of people on in the Delbrook area, and I have to tell you, I think they're absolutely correct. This is a bit of a surprise that some people would, you know, say, hey, you're admitting that these people are correct. And I said, yeah. The problem we've got on Delbrook is the speed limit is much too low. The speed limit should be set at 100 kilometers an hour, and there should be no stop signs. So people that are coming down from the top of Delbrook down to West Queens Road, I think that's West Queens Road. So what should happen is at the top of Delbrook, the speed limit should be, say, 60 or 70 kilometers an hour. As you come down Delbrook, the speed limit should be raised to 100 kilometers an hour. And then as people approach West Queens Road, there should be delineators. And this happens in a lot of places where people are required to reduce their speed from 100 down to 90, down to 80, down to 70, and then down to 60. So that would, if you put up those signs, it's very easy, just put up a few signs, speed limit is now 70, it's now 60, it's now 50. We have eliminated the problem because these people are talking about speeding on Delbrook, and we eliminate the issue because there is no longer any speeding. And another person, one of the speakers talked about Schumacher. I got to tell you, some years ago I had a nice chat with Mr. Schumacher, Mike Schumacher, and both of us were in Monaco for the Grand Prix, and he actually explained that there are these road. It's painted right on the road. Everybody knows where to slow down. They slow down from 280 to 240, whatever. We can do the same thing on Delbrook. People slow down from 100 to 80 to 70, and everything is perfectly fine. And I do get it that people are concerned about crossing the road, but I wouldn't cross the road. I've been to Monaco for the Grand Prix twice. I wouldn't cross the road in front of a car going 100 kilometers an hour. Why would people living in Delbrook want to walk in front of a car going 100 kilometers an hour? It's silliness. Now, if there is a true reason to slow down the cars before they get to West Queens, yeah, put in a set of traffic lights or a stop sign. Okay, that's all you need to do. All these people that are like 1 foot out of the grave that come to these meetings to bitch and whine about Delbrook, put the speed limit at 100, put up 1 or 2 signs,
Okay.
reduce the speed to 50 when it gets to West Queens Road. Okay, you're all dismissed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hazen Colbert, for your comments. Okay, we have completed the time for public input today, and thank everybody for their input. Council, just before we get into the regular agenda, I'm inclined, there's 2 items, 8.2 and 8.3, that already won't have significant discussion on them, and I'm proposing them for consent agenda. And so just to be reminded of what a consent agenda is, I can propose it, and any member of council that wishes to pull one or both of those items off, you just say that you'd like it spoken about, and then we'll just return it to the regular agenda. But if it receives the consent of the council, then it will advance and all of the items on the consent agenda will be considered passed. And so I'm going to be moving items 8.2 and 8.3 as consent agenda items. Would any member of council like to withdraw an item from that consent agenda? Okay, it's seconded by Councilor Murray. I'll call the. Can I just say one thing? No, not about the items, otherwise we pull the items out.
I'm not saying about the items,
okay,
Mayor Little, it's just that on adoption, we don't speak.
That's correct. There wouldn't be debate on adoption on 8.3 as well. That's correct.
That's why you would pull it out.
That's correct. Okay. Hearing none, so I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded, motion carries. Items 8.2 and 8.3 have now been passed. Okay, returning back to the regular agenda. So we have item 8.1. This is the Climate Ready Municipal Buildings Policy. We do have some representative staff here to introduce a staff report on this matter. So I'm going to go to Carolyn Jackson for your opening comments.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I wanted to introduce Adam Wright, Sustainability Planner, and Mike Gamble, Section Manager Facilities. This has really been a collaborative effort between climate and biodiversity and the facilities group. And the proposed policy really guides the design and construction of district facilities for really 3 main goals: reducing emissions, resilience to climate change, and protecting and enhancing biodiversity. And I just want to note, before Adam has a few slides, I think, that he's going to share with you this evening. A lot of what's in this policy actually reflects much of what we've already been doing, but we want to take this opportunity to really formalize it and also to rescind a couple of policies that are somewhat outdated. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wright.
Welcome, Adam Wright. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council and members of the public. We have a brief presentation on the proposed climate-ready municipal buildings policy that would establish performance requirements for new municipal buildings, such as community recreation centers, and other district-owned buildings. The district is taking action in 6 key areas to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, protect and enhance our environment, and improve resilience to climate change. The policy being proposed this evening falls primarily under corporate leadership. One way the district demonstrates leadership in the community is through designing and operating high-performance, low-carbon municipal buildings. The district has achieved significant reductions in energy use and carbon emissions in both new and existing municipal buildings, as guided by the district's ongoing corporate energy management program. The proposed policy brings our standards for new district-owned buildings into alignment with the district's climate and biodiversity goals. The proposed policy has 4 key components for new municipal buildings: achieving a performance-based design standard, ensuring low-carbon materials and operations, and improving climate resilience and biodiversity. To ensure high standards of energy efficiency, the proposed policy would require that new municipal buildings achieve certification with either the Passive House Institute or the Zero Carbon Building Design Standard. Passive House buildings use up to 90% less energy as compared to average buildings in Canada by using high-performance materials and integrated design that typically results in operating cost savings from less energy use and less maintenance. The Zero Carbon Building Design Standard ensures that buildings meet energy efficiency standards and can achieve zero carbon operations, for example, through the use of renewable energy, low carbon materials, and by otherwise reducing carbon from the building. These standards are recommended by industry experts for their ability to achieve meaningful reductions in energy and emissions while being cost effective over the life of the building. The proposed policy includes additional measures that help address carbon emissions from municipal buildings, including requirements for using renewable energy, reporting emissions associated with building materials and refrigerants in mechanical systems, and for enhanced commissioning to ensure that buildings performed as they are designed. The policy includes measures to help improve climate resilience of municipal buildings through requirements for cooling and enhanced air filtration systems to reduce the impacts of extreme heat and improve indoor air quality. Finally, the proposed policy includes measures to support biodiversity by connecting natural systems through site and landscape design, integrating green infrastructure, and measures to support healthy ecosystems. The proposed update brings the policy for new municipal buildings into alignment with the district's climate and biodiversity goals and enables the district to advance corporate leadership in the community. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Council, I see Councillor Murray's hand up first.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Seconded by Councillor Back. Councillor Murray, your comments.
Thank you, Mayor Little. What's our inventory of buildings in the municipality that we still need to have, retrofit or replace in regards to clean energy and more energy efficient facilities? What are we looking at number wise?
Through your worship to council, there's roughly 100 buildings in our portfolio. They're all different ages and different time spans. I couldn't give you an exact answer for how many are in the retrofit stage, but a number of our buildings in that portfolio are in the category of timing to be retrofit.
And what are we looking at as a time frame, like over the next 10 years? We're going to be rebuilding these buildings. We're looking at a percentage of retrofits to these buildings.
It's a combination of replacements, renewals, retrofits, depending on the size of the building, its function, demand, capacity, the condition that it's in. So there's a number of considerations.
Right. And the cost of that?
The cost of the renewals and replacements is in the asset management plan for our facilities. It's detailed in there.
Do we have that number, Mr. Joyce? Just because we're talking about budgets going forward. And we are talking about capacity issues too on some of these projects. I'm just curious as to what that looks like.
Through your worship, it'd be in the tens of millions of dollars. We can provide that information to council, but
Right.
certainly in the tens of millions. Buildings that we're constructing now are in the $40–50 million range for complete rebuilds.
Right.
A little louder next time, thanks.
We're looking at a line item in our budget for HVAC improvements in our libraries, 3 of our libraries in the municipality. And some of them were built a long time ago, 40 years ago, I think, Capilano, 40, 50 years ago with Capilano, 20 was Lynn Valley, 25 was Parkgate. So as we retrofit these buildings with those new systems for energy efficiency and green energy, what is the lifespan of that equipment? You're going to tell me, I hope that it's longer than 25 years. I'm looking at you, but I'm talking to you. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Do you have those numbers or?
I don't have the number. It depends on the building and the system. So yes.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll look forward to, oh, sorry, Carolyn. Yeah.
I think really it's very specific to the building, but one of the things that we do through our asset management process is we look at when a system is coming up for replacement and we take the opportunity to replace it with a lower carbon alternative. And that's one of the means that we're achieving our climate targets is just through that proactive replacement, because those systems have to be replaced anyway, they're end of life. And so we take that opportunity to put in a lower carbon system.
The old part of the new part of my stepfather's 3-story brownstone in the UK in Suffolk is the new part is about 300 years old. The old part is over 500 years old. And so when we talk about lifespan of this kind of equipment being at 25 years or a building, a wood structure being at 40 years past its lifespan, I hope that we're always looking at getting the longest amount of time out of this equipment and out of these facilities that we're building. We can go back decades, and I know our parks manager, Ms. Warner, cringes when I bring up the bathrooms at Kate's Park, which are the original bathrooms that when my sister and I were little, we used when we visited the playground there. But they're still standing, those old cinder block bathrooms. And I know that we're looking at working on them as well. So I support, obviously, this initiative going forward, bringing our corporate supply up to a reasonable level of energy efficiency. And I look forward to the next item as well about reaching out to stakeholders in regards to things changing as quickly as they are in this field. So thank you for your presentation.
Councillor Back, you were the seconder on the motion. Do you have additional comments?
Just very briefly, thank you very much for the presentation and thank you for all the work that's gone into getting it to this point. This is aligned with our community energy and emissions plan, and I think it's an area of work here at the district that we can be really proud of. So any idea how this compares to the other North Shore municipalities in terms of some of their policies around this?
Yeah, thank you, through your worship. We're regularly collaborating with our counterparts at the District of West Vancouver and the City of North Vancouver, particularly so on community-facing low-carbon building policy. But I know that both staff that we speak with and meet with regularly are keen to advance low-carbon, high-performance municipal buildings.
That's great. Thank you. Well, it's about leading by example. So thanks a lot.
I'm going to just add my own comments, if I may. Just a word of caution over some of this. I mean, we opened the library in Lynn Valley in 2007, which means we've only got 15 years of use out of the HVAC system there. I don't know if that's specifically one of the targeted projects in that, but because we were going after LEED Gold on the project, the decision was made to undersize the HVAC to qualify for the point system. And what we ended up with was an HVAC that had to run 24/7 because it was underpowered for the building that it was in. And so, and furthermore, it still couldn't handle the peak load demand, and a bunch of our staff and the upper offices staff on the upper floors, because you had an open stairwell between the different levels, they had personal warmers and personal coolers at their desk using electricity in addition to the HVAC system. We also had to do an upgrade to the stairwell to try to better manage the air system's ability to manage. So there's lots of well-intentioned policies. I really just want us to be thoughtful about what the unintended consequences are going to be. Are we going to have to change the form of the building in order to accommodate this particular piece of HVAC? Are we going to have to supplement the HVAC in peak periods with secondary systems throughout the building? And so that decision, which was intended to have been an improvement on, for environmental conditions in the building, in the end, I don't think that you would be able to reach that conclusion. And so just to comment on that as we go forward, we have to always be considering the life cycle and the knock-on impacts to the rest of the building, because it's not just simply about getting the least possible in order to get the number down as low as possible. It may end up being insufficient and causing knock-on effects. But I'm supportive of this generally. I think that the municipality and our community expects us to be leaders in cleaning up our facilities and making sure that they're run efficiently. And we can also be promoting these technologies as we go through these projects. So I am generally supportive. I don't see any other speakers from council this time, so I'm prepared to call the question.
I just want to say one thing more. We have an enormous amount of new employees that are coming on board with the district. I have met one, but not another. Adam Wright is our sustainability planner in climate action, natural systems, and biodiversities. There's Adam, and Mike Gamble is our new section manager of facilities. So welcome to both of you. But I would like to request through the municipal manager that when we do have new employees come to present to council, that they introduce themselves so we can get to know them a little bit more. Because soon some of us are not going to know anyone in the building, and because everybody's new. But we're glad that you're here, and thanks for the presentation.
Thank you for the comment, Councilor Murray. Okay, I'm prepared to call the question, council. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you. Since items 8.2 and 8.3 are passed under consent, we're now going to be moving on to item 8.4, which is the cannabis retail store on Lynn Valley Road. Councillor Hanson, okay, so just before we go into council discussion, so this matter, we had a public hearing on the matter. This is being returned. It was closed on February 7th. This matter is being returned for second and third reading, which means it's the first opportunity for council to really debate the merits of the bylaw being considered. And so at this point, Councillor Hanson, you had your hand up first. You have a motion?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Okay, is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Murray. So the staff recommendation here was to give both second, third, and adoption. And I want to be clear about this. Where we would normally separate out adoption is when we have technical challenges to meet. We have other, so we reserve an opportunity for staff to go back, work out contract details. In this case, there is no requirement for a delay between second and third. So the staff recommendation is second, third, and adoption. Councillor Hanson, are you okay with that being? Yes. And Councillor Murray, you've seconded that. Thank you.
There'll be two distinct motions. We'd like to get through second and third. That's one motion.
That's fine. I'll handle them that way. That's fine. Councillor Hanson, your comments, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm pleased to support the rezoning of this site at the Lynn Valley Mall to accommodate cannabis retail. I'd like to commence my remarks by noting a couple of things. First, much of the discussion at the public hearing concerned issues of cannabis policy beyond our jurisdiction. We heard about the broader social implications of cannabis. We heard about the health implications of cannabis. None of that, strictly speaking, is the mandate of this body. The federal government has legalized cannabis. The provincial government has created a regulatory scheme for cannabis. Our task, consistent with our task broadly, is land use. Is this an appropriate site for this use in our community? The factors that I considered in considering the land use of cannabis and cannabis retail in this particular site is, first of all, council has prescribed in a policy passed in 2019 appropriate criteria for citing cannabis retail. And this site complies with all of the elements of the policy. Beyond that, I note that there is of particular importance to me. I note that there is no cannabis retail in Lynn Valley, and the citing of cannabis retail here will allow persons to purchase cannabis without driving to other centers, and that supports other initiatives and priorities of this council. I know that there's a liquor store very near the proposed site, and I know that the site has parking. I do wish to acknowledge the voices that say that cannabis retail is not appropriate in what they consider to be a family-friendly location. I would at the same time observe that there's no apparent alarm at the sale of alcohol, cigarettes, or even lottery tickets within the mall. And I think it would be discriminatory, frankly, for us to take a view with respect to cannabis, which is now a legal product, which somehow puts it into a category all of its own when placed against these other retail uses. I do not believe that the addition of cannabis retail will change the nature of the community character in this location. And I also note finally the vast experience of the applicant in the cannabis business, and I wish him well as he undertakes this endeavor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. When the district was first faced with looking at siting of cannabis retail in the municipality, we put together a process that would require a process such as the one that we're looking at right now, which was a rezoning. So each individual application had to come to council for consideration because it was a new dawn in how we were going to deal with the legalization of cannabis within the province of British Columbia and within Canada. And our process was designed to allow a cannabis store in each of our town centers. And the first one that we considered was one in Deep Cove, nowhere near a town center. And there was a significant debate within the community about it. And I, at the time, voted against it because I felt that if we were going to attest a policy and then go against our own direction on the first application, what was the point in the policy? What was the point in taking all of this time? What was the point in all the money that we spend to do the policy in the first place? So I found it a bit hypocritical of us to start a process that we weren't even going to follow. Since that time, council has supported every application that has come forward, some unanimously, some not. And I think it's time for us to review that policy as we go forward. We know after the last few years of cannabis retail being brought into the community, we have had, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we have had no complaints in any of the facilities that we have approved in the District of North Vancouver in regards to any issue. The RCMP has not received any complaints. The facilities, I have been in the facilities, they are well managed, they are well looked after, they are very professional retail stores with very strict protocols in regards to, like the liquor store, very strict protocols. And strict protocols, you know, and there is a concern of kids, young people accessing these products. And that is something that is a reality in our communities, that young people do access these products. I'm not sure if getting rid of a liquor store is going to reduce the impact on young people accessing these products. As Councillor Hanson points out, these are legal products that are sold in this province. And like all other retail uses, most of them are just included in our zoning bylaw. So I think we put this process in place to test the facilities and to make sure there weren't any issues. It was going to give us a sober second thought. And I confirm that sober second thought. I have no concerns going forward, and I will be supporting this one in Lynn Valley.
Thank you very much, Councillor Murray. Councillor Ma.
Thank you. And thank you to Councillor Hanson for his comments on the legislative background. That was appreciated. I also recognize that many residents have responded and sent comments to council on this issue, and I do appreciate the concerns raised. However, I'm going to support this rezoning applications for the following reasons. It is consistent with the district policy from 2019. And as I read in the report and from talking with others, there hasn't been any significant reported issues at the 2 existing sites in the district. The design and entrance of the proposed outlet is away from the main pedestrian flow at Lynn Valley Center. I think that's a significant accommodation to some of the concerns. And finally, there are people using cannabis for therapeutic reasons. There is more public acceptance than when I was growing up, and it's a sign of, I think, changing times. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Mom. Just my own comments on the matter. I think that they have adequately met the guidelines and requirements that the district set out in the space. I definitely heard the concerns raised by the neighboring business and Country Health, I believe is what they're called. And you know, it's really up to BOZA as a property manager to manage conflicts. It's not really up to the district necessarily. So I don't see why the inclusion of this would negatively impact that business. And ultimately, I think that it will be up to BOZA as a property manager to mitigate negative impacts. But the entrances are effectively in 2 completely separate areas of the mall, despite the fact that the buildings themselves share a wall. And so I think that that impact is reasonably mitigated. So I will be supportive of this. I did want to make a general comment about cannabis in the community and the legalization of recreational cannabis. And maybe our MLAs are listening, but you know, one of the big promises in legalization was that it was going to be an effective tool to reduce drug dealing in our community. And the challenge we have is that the government has become so accustomed to already to a tremendous amount of taxation coming through these stores that they're actually, the price is so high that it's going to have a very limited effect on removing drug dealers in our community. So I've asked around, and you can visit somebody who's selling marijuana outside of the legal system, and it's less than 1/3 the cost of these because of the taxes that we put in place, because of the cost for bricks and mortar. And I think the provincial government's going to have to sharpen its pencil about how much money it takes out of the system in order to be able to get the prices down competitive enough so that we can actually reduce the incentive to using a personal drug dealer rather than using a properly legislated place that has good upstream controls on the quality of the product, making sure that there's no molds, there's no negative impacts that can affect people's health, that you have the ability to go and find the source for where it was produced and make sure that it's properly managed. While I'm supportive of this, I just wanted to restate to the provincial government that this is actually not a very good source for drawing taxation in the community. This should be as low as it reasonably can so that it has a disruptive effect on drug trade in our community. But I will be supportive of the recommendation as it stands. I see Councillor Forbes next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to be supporting this, and I agree with everything that's been said, that cannabis is made legal, and therefore I don't look at it as being any, I look at it as being our requirement to abide by that. That's our requirement. But the location of where we approve these things is something that we have discretion on. And I personally, I guess the opposite of some other councillors have already said, I think this is rather a hidden entrance, a hidden location, sort of on the back side. They're going to run at hours where the rest of the mall isn't open, if I'm reading the reports correctly. And I recall, I'm showing my age now, but I recall problems with just a 7-Eleven that used to be up there before the Lynn Valley Village. And I just think that I would have even preferred it to be accessible from the inside of the mall, where it would be around the rest of the businesses, the rest of the customer traffic, the hours be the same as the other businesses. And there would be some vibrancy, continuous vibrancy in the mall. I think this being put out the back by itself, and also it's very, very close to a lot of residential buildings there, 6 towers in the fairly new towers. I'd like to point out that the other 4 locations, and there are 4 in the district, the other 4 locations that we have approved are at more open sites. 2 of them are on Marine Drive. 1 of them is down on Barrows, and the other one is over on Dollarton Highway. They're very open. The Dollarton Highway one is in a smaller sort of strip mall area. And it's worked out quite well, but it's down on Dollarton, and there was a little bit of discussion there because it was close to residential. We also had a proposal put forward for a cannabis shop up by Handsworth, but there was so much outcry from the residents in that area that the applicant withdrew the application. I think that's something. The other thing is, I think that's something that Lynn Valley has to be looked at, is that we're trying to make these complete communities, and yet a lot of us who live in Lynn Valley, I live in Lynn Valley, we don't consider the Lynn Valley Mall complete. We're missing things like a gift shop, an infant store, sports equipment store, a hardware store, a family go in and sit down, family dining would be nice. And we seem to be ending up a lot like Edgemont was for a time, where we're getting to be all banks, 2 grocery stores, banks, and liquor store, and now a cannabis store. And there's a vape shop just across Lynn Valley Road, across from McDonald's. So to be a complete community, we need to have more, I think, I would like to have more family-friendly type of businesses that cater to a larger community population. So I'm going to vote not in favor of this motion, because it's not that I disagree with the cannabis legalization part of it, but I disagree with the location. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I see no further speakers, so I'm going to call the motion on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? With Councillor Forbes opposed. Thank you very much. Oh, and sorry, that was on second and third, and I do have to separate them out. So we do have a second motion, which is on adoption itself. Again, agreed to by the first, by the mover and seconder. Councillor Murray, you were the seconder of the second. Okay, agreed. Call the question on adoption. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries with Councillor Forbes opposed. Thank you very much. Next item up this evening is item 8.5. This is the 1310 Monashee mixed-use development. And at this point, I'm gonna, oh, sorry, this item is, again, like the last item, it was considered in a public hearing, and this matter is now being returned for second and third reading, which means it's again an opportunity for council to have really their first public debates on the final proposal. And so at this point, council, I'm looking for a mover. I'm happy to move it. I'll be moving the staff recommendation. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Ma. Just my initial comments on it. We've been working for a very long time to try to help advance housing goals on Capilano University. Capilano University has a goal of about 1,000 units in the near term to support their operations at the university. This property lies slightly outside of the university footprint. And so while I know that noted in the public hearing that the student union was really pressing for this to entirely 100% be treated as student housing, that was problematic because the owner was a private owner outside of the university, and the university itself wasn't prepared, or the province prepared, to buy the property for those purposes. And so everything that we could get out of it was going to happen through a voluntary negotiation between the parties. The developer asked for a relatively significant increase on the matter because it was going to be going from parks, recreation, and open space up to a rather significant density on the site. But out of that, I think we've gotten some very significant benefits, specifically for staff, student, and faculty at the university. I think our goal is always going to be with these properties, both on the university property and in the adjacent properties, is to deliver what we can to support the university. And I think that we've been successful in doing so. Would I like the higher ratio? Of course I would. But I happen to think that this is going to go to dramatically improve the flexibility of the university in terms of delivering a quality education with proper supportive services, including housing for staff, student, and faculty. So I will be supportive of the staff recommendation. I believe the seconder on the matter was Councillor Ma. Your comments?
Thank you, Mayor Little. I previously voted in favor of this bylaw amendment at first reading, and I continue to support it. The project is a combination of workforce housing and student housing for CAPU. I note that the project does have support from Paul Dangerfield, the president of CAPU. I also want to commend the staff for doing a good job in negotiating a strong housing agreement. Another big consideration was this project, although I guess it affects the dog kennel, it does not displace any existing tenants. And finally, together with the bus loop, the plant, dormitories, and the commercial units, is going to create a nice little hub and community space for the students and for the university. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ma. Now I've got Councillors Back, Hanson, and Murray. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I will be continuing to support this project as well. I think as it's gone along and through the process, it's become a better project. And now with 50% of the homes here of direct benefit to the university community, both the students, faculty, and staff, as well as the 32 homes which will be non-market rents. I think it represents a significant benefit to the university. And then with being mixed use and having the commercial space, be it a grocery store and a restaurant space, I think will really enhance the university campus as the campus grows. And I know that it's not directly part of the campus lands, but it certainly is right there adjacent. And I think will be a great evolution for everyone up in that area of the community. And it's going to deliver 315 rental homes, which we surely need badly in our community. So pleased to support this and happy to see it move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillors Hanson and Murray. Councillor Hanson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I will be supporting this proposal, but I'm also going to be putting forward what I hope will be viewed as a friendly amendment with respect to further geotechnical work to be done by the district, independent of the work that's already been done. But I'll get to that in my remarks. I begin by saying that I do support this proposal to build 315 rental units at CAPU, including 32 CAPU guaranteed non-market rental units, 126 CAPU guaranteed market rental, and 126 market rental, plus 8,500 feet of commercial space. I believe this to be exactly the kind of housing our community needs, and specifically the housing for students, faculty, and staff at CAPU is exactly the type of housing I believe that CAPU needs. I see, as others have said, significant benefits to our community. Some of those include less transportation impact, particularly with respect to the CAPU students, faculty, and staff who will be able to live and work on campus, a more vibrant CAPU, more rental housing, more affordable rental housing. And I know that this proposal has been carefully considered by this council, first of all, in a meeting on November the 12th, 2020, a meeting on May the 30th, 2022, and most recently, meetings on December the 5th, 2022, and January 31st, 2023. When a public hearing was held and more questions were asked by council. Dealing with the questions that were asked by council and dealing specifically with the engineering aspect, I have carefully read the two geotechnical reports that have been prepared, one of July the 9th, 2020, and the other October 21, 2020. And I note in the clarifying comments the fact that the district will retain overarching authority with respect to the safety of the site and the development of the site, and will satisfy itself, both the chief building official and municipal engineer, as to the safety of the site. I'm going to put forward as a friendly amendment that as a condition of this proposal, should that be received as friendly, that as a condition of this proposal, the district commission a peer-reviewed geotechnical assessment to comment on the two reports that have been prepared. I note that the engineers conclude the land may be used safely for the use intended, and I don't wish to substitute my lay judgment for that of these engineers, who are obviously specialized and have training and experience in exactly this determination. At the same time, I felt that in the questions asked by council on the most recent meeting, discussion of intensity rain events, discussion of the time of year that the soil sample was taken, I thought reasonable questions were raised that should reasonably be answered. So as much as I support the proposal, I think that it would be reasonable for the district to satisfy the public with respect to the safety of this site, given that we have had a history of slides in our community, to satisfy the public by going and commissioning our own engineer merely to review the work that's been done and confirm that they're in agreement that the site is safe for this intended purpose. Thank you.
I'm going to look for some direction from staff, because we have had a public hearing on a different motion. That would change it a bit. So Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just want to clarify, as noted in the post-hearing report before council, the chief building official, which has delegated authority under council's bylaws in section 56 of the community charter, has indicated that they'll be requiring a further geotechnical report once the actual detailed design is presented to the district. So at this stage of rezoning stage, we do have drawings, but we don't have the full detailed design that would come with subsequent permit applications. Once we have that, that will be looked at again in terms of the geotechnical site safety, and we'll be requiring various matters such as a declaration that it's safe for the use intended based on the exact design. As well, there are various BC Building Code requirements such as letters of assurance for the detailed design, as well as the compliance monitoring during construction. So the matter is, from staff's perspective, sufficiently dealt with in the existing powers, and staff's indication from the chief building official that that will be a requirement at the subsequent permit stages.
I suppose.
Before you go back, so I just want to clarify something else that was raised. Would that be a peer assessment where there's two different technical bodies having a discussion about the site, or is that still single source, as in what's happened to this point?
Your Worship, we rely on the geotechnical report presented, and if staff, the chief building official in this case, as I described, believes that a peer review is necessary, they will require it to ensure that it meets the standard of the district if there is a concern being raised. That is a discretional decision to the chief building official.
Okay, so as the mover of it, I'm not going to accept it as friendly, but I think it's already been addressed by staff and they're satisfied that they already have the tools to be able to do exactly what you've said. Does that meet your satisfaction, Councillor Hanson?
I just make the comment that will we be engaging the necessary expert as opposed to relying on?
Sorry, that's mine.
I mean, this is something that comes up in my line of work frequently, where there's one expert hired by one party and other experts hired by others. Not that I'm in any way casting any criticism upon any expert, but in order to ensure the public's peace of mind over this, we'll be retaining our own expert to comment on the safety. I mean, this is a matter of safety. Will we be retaining our own expert to comment on the safety, the geotechnical safety of the site?
I think the answer from staff has already been that they have the ability to, if they're not satisfied with the information that comes back, but it's not an automatic on developments in the District of North Vancouver under normal circumstances. Is that
Your
fair,
Worship,
Mr. Milburn?
Just to clarify, I believe the question was with respect to independent advice directly to the district. Yes, that's how we conduct a peer review. It's independent advice to the district. And I just want to assure council, we recognize this as a significant concern from the get-go, and which is why we required a qualified professional report, and will continue to require that to ensure public safety, which is paramount in our minds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't see any, oh, sorry, Councillor Muir, you had your hand up. Have you withdrawn?
Oh, no, I haven't withdrawn.
go
No,
ahead,
no, no.
please.
I have concerns about this, but I share Councillor Hanson's perspective. I don't think it is a requirement of staff to require a peer review on this site. In the 1970s on the Seymour Valley, we had a landslide. In 2005, in the Seymour Valley on the Berkeley Escarpment, we had a landslide in which a resident lost her life. In 2007, we had a landslide just below this site on Monashee that narrowly missed a house, which was a neighbor of mine at the time. And in 2015, we had another slide at Twin Bridges within the area of Metro Vancouver. A significant slide that was off a trailhead. BGC is one of the preeminent expert engineering firms in the region that was hired by the district to do an assessment of all of our escarpments after the 2005 incident. And they did assess this escarpment between 1147 and 1155 Heritage Boulevard and 2061 and 2080, or 1261 and 1287 Seymour Boulevard. They note that it was done for residential purposes and that the issues around the BC Hydro lines, Capilano College buildings, and municipal and regional infrastructure was not part of their assessment. This was a beginning, and the report was submitted by Norm Farrell, a resident on Seymour Boulevard, and submitted as part of the public hearing, so council has a copy. The note on page 13 of the report suggests that above these properties, there is evidence of recent slumping, overturned trees, and relic slides. A relic slide above 1147 and 1151 Heritage Boulevard originates from a similar elevation to the 2007 landslide, may have been a flow type landslide. There are old forestry skid roads, and older conifers are pistol butted, which is what we learned during the 2005 slide is an indication of concern. So although Mr. Milburn states that this was a very big concern for staff, I note that it was not highly detailed in the report that was submitted. And on page 220 of our report, I raised the question during the hearing that I wanted engineering staff to comment on the BGC report and the impacts of developing a building and structure such as this on that escarpment. And what I got back within the report was what Councillor Hanson communicated, which was that our building department will address that. But that is not a peer review. That is, if we need one, staff will make that determination. In talking to Mr. Joyce, I do not have any clarity that planning staff discussed this issue with him. And even the work that was recommended by BGC over the years in regards to the private property owners being responsible for their property, which is the site that Darwin Properties has optioned. We don't even know if that work was done. On page 220 of our staff report, it talks about landscaping and stormwater, 4B 141-10. It doesn't talk about stormwater at all. It talks about all lands not occupied by buildings, patios, driveways, and walkways shall be landscaped. A 6-foot high screen consisting of a solid fence with a minimum 90% capacity is required, and utility boxes and solid waste and loading areas are to be addressed, but nothing about stormwater in this report. And that was the specific question that I asked during the public hearing. So maybe Mr. Joyce has a comment.
Like your additional 2 minutes? Mr. Joyce, your quick response?
Through your worship, peer reviews are not uncommon for us to do at the district. Certainly development engineering and building department would look at this site. Councillor Murray highlights some of the work that was done in 2009. There is a lot of history to this embankment and escarpment, but I would be comfortable working through Mr. Milburn's department. We've heard at the support if is required, see how this progresses at this point, and the option is certainly open for staff to look at doing a peer review.
So I'll be bringing a formal amendment forward. A formal amendment after the rest of council speaks on my second 2 minutes.
Okay, well, I have no further speakers at this time.
Oh, I think Councillor Forbes has.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Forbes. Sorry, go ahead.
So easily forgotten.
Apologies.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to say I concur with Councillor Hansen's friendly amendment and with comments made by Councillor Murray. I put myself in the position of, would I want to live at the bottom of that escarpment with the information that I had been given or that is available right now? And my answer is, I would like a second opinion. Whenever in doubt, go for a second opinion. And I'm not saying, again, like Councillor Hansen said, not saying that there's necessarily anything wrong, but because we are talking about safety, because we have a history of problems with slides in that area, and because of climate change, where we are going to have a lot more volatility in what our weather is, what our runoff will be. For those 3 reasons, I would feel much better to have a separate independent peer review done. And I'm hoping that they'll both come out saying the same thing, but I think we owe it to the public that if we ask them to trust us, we should get a second report. So I would just concur with Councillor Hansen and Councillor Murray. Thank you.
Okay. And so Councillor Murray, there are very limited things that we can actually do to alter a motion that's come through public hearing. And so I want to hear what you are proposing, but we have to be pretty cautious because we've gone this far through the process. And if it's something that under normal due course is conducted before we do the building permit process, then probably the most normal thing to do would be to allow that to take place after that point. We also can't make motions that are conditional or subject to. This is about the approval of the rezoning. They've gone through the process correctly up until this point. Council gave them first reading, council has moved through the public hearing, and now we're hearing council's debate. And so the motion also couldn't be a conditionality or a subject to. Either we're giving rezoning or we're not.
So based on that statement, if the building department determines that there's a challenge with this site based on staff understanding or learning through a recommendation that we could make, that we do want them to do a peer review, we want BGC to do a peer review on this property, and they come back with concerns, then what?
Then they would be unable
The
to
site
build
would
the
be,
building.
but then the site would be zoned.
They would still be unable to build the building.
So then I will ask that council formally request, council can support this rezoning, but council, that staff are advised that a formal peer review by BGC Engineering is conducted on this property and on this slope.
Would that be considered in order, Mr. Clerk?
Your worship, I would look to maybe for some input from Mr. Milburn, but I would question the report back on the peer review, as Mr. Milburn said, the peer review will take place in the normal course of pursuing a building permit. If the intent is that results of that peer review be reported back to council, that potentially could introduce new information and require a new public hearing.
And that would be
Correct
fine
me
if the
if
peer
I'm
review
off
brought up concerns
But the
with the
decision
property.
tonight has to be about the rezoning. It's not a conditionality, not waiting for a future decision to be made or a
That's
future
fine, Mayor
report.
Little, and that can be done. But what I'm saying is that I don't want staff to determine for themselves that there needs to be a peer review done on this site. I want us to give them direction that there is to be one on this site because of a report that we already have that was it was a preliminary phased report on recommendations to the district. And under our natural hazards database, we are, Mr. Joyce has to go back to even look at whether or not those recommendations were conducted and concluded. So I am requesting that, yes, you can rezone this property, but that it is not an option for staff to determine whether or not they feel like this is something that is needed through the building process. This is something that we are requiring based on evidence and an existing report that recommends further work.
So I'm just going to take my second 2 minutes to just talk about my general feelings on the issue, if I may. I get it, and I definitely hear the concerns of neighbors, and I understand that people would be concerned about slope stability within the general area. I didn't come on council until later in 2005, but I was here during the slide and the remediation issues that happened on the opposite slope in Berkeley, and it was a huge community impact. What they called a societal risk. Was because it impacted people's confidence along the entire escarpment, on the east escarpment of the river. But I get it, and I understand how seriously it has to be taken. And maybe the example is not perfect in the situation, but I've been watching a lot of what's been going on in Turkey and Syria because of the earthquakes, and over 1,000 buildings collapsed during that. And I sit and I go, well, what's our responsibility as political leaders to interfere with geotechnical expertise? We obviously want to push up the standard wherever we can, make sure that they're meeting the highest achievable standards in the province of BC, and encourage the provincial government to be pushing those standards up. But ultimately, I worked in a lumber yard in logistics and transportation. I am not a geotechnical engineer. And so it puts us in a very strange spot when the municipality is deciding, when the council is the one deciding whether or not something should be peer reviewed. I'd rather have that in the hands of qualified staff who have to make those kinds of decisions. Obviously, I have strong feelings on whether this site would be more stable or less stable based on whether this project proceeds. And I certainly understand the impact it could have on neighboring properties. But I'm still inclined to put the decision into the hands of people who are qualified and understand the subject material better than I do. And I think that we have already done that with allowing staff to make the decision as to whether the matter needs to be peer reviewed or not. I don't know if that's been a compelling argument or not, but I don't want the council to be using our time to be second guessing the professional credentials and accreditation of people in the process, despite the fact that I hear you, and it is a very serious public concern, stability on these slopes. My 2 minutes is up. Mr. Milburn, did you have comments to add to that? And then I see Councillor Murray for your second time, 2 minutes. Just finishing.
Thank you, Your Worship. The way I see it, there are two courses before council. One is related to this bylaw. And if council feels that a peer review is needed for the existing report that was considered by council at public hearing, then that could be directed, but that would have the natural consequence of requiring a new public hearing to review that material so it is available publicly. If, however, council wishes to encourage staff's consideration, we can receive that direction. However, ultimately, the act is not, if it's at the building permit stage, the act gives that authority specifically to the building inspector, not council. And the building inspector must not issue the permit if the qualified professional determines that the site cannot be safely used. So just providing assurance to council, it is not this sort of discretionary perspective. If the site cannot be used safely, the inspector cannot issue the permit. And in terms of seeking a peer review, we do this often. We do this in circumstances where we feel that the report somehow doesn't reflect the full extent of council's very extensive requirements around guidelines, around level of safety requirements in council's policy, around best engineering practice. So staff are familiar with this approach. Staff review many, dozens and dozens of geotechnical reports every year, and we ensure public safety through that process. And the inspector is given that authority under the Act in order to make that determination. We do not have geotechnical engineers on staff. We rely on a third-party report and third-party peer review. That's how we review these matters. I hope that's helpful.
No, that is helpful. Thank you very much. So, Councillor Murray, what I'm going to do is I'm going to consider your last comments proposal of a motion, and therefore you still have some speaking time if you want to respond to what Mr. Milburn has said.
From the April 30th, 2009 BGC report, the landslide risk management program adopted by DNV defines the preliminary analysis phase of the risk communication process as a risk scenario-based ranking system. This site below this escarpment was rated as high and moderate in regards to a slide. And Mayor Little, I was around in 2005, and council was directly involved in making decisions in regards to hiring BGC, in regards to speaking to all of the residents, in regards to making decisions where homes were purchased by the province of British Columbia on the Blue Ridge Escarpment because that escarpment was considered unsafe. This is a significant amount of work that we have done over the years, and quite frankly, I was stunned that the fact that we've been through 4 slides in this valley in the District of North Vancouver, this report included very little other than we're going to have the building department to address it. And if they think we need to do something, we will. This is a significant issue and it should have been brought forward during first reading and to the public hearing. So I would just request that an independent engineering report, which is what I asked for, which is not what I got within the report. And if there wasn't going to be that provided, I wish somebody would have told me that when I was asking the question. It seemed to be fine. It was included in as a question in the public hearing minutes, but it was not addressed. So I would just ask that an independent engineering report be brought forward, preferably BGC, who knows the area and has all the background documentation on the stability of this slope.
So as was said, we can't make the rezoning.
I'm not saying subject to. It's a
conditional.
separate.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test the motion that's on the floor. And then if you would like to make a recommendation to staff to do that, and I'm sorry, we can't direct staff. There is an arm's length piece. The returning officer, or sorry, the approving officer has the legal ability to make the decision. We can make a recommendation.
Well, I'd like to make a recommendation prior to the rezoning, because if that's not supported, then I can't support the rezoning.
All right, you got me for a moment.
Thank you. Good one.
Then it would have to go back to a public hearing though,
Why?
because there'd be new information introduced.
I asked for it. That's why I read it into the record.
But
And the BGC report is already part of this.
But the staff responded to the question. They did not go out and hire a new firm to review the matter. They responded to the question.
But if they do it on their own volition, you'd have to open it up anyway if they bring forward concerns.
At the public hearing closed, though, that wasn't the discussion. The discussion wasn't that the district should go out and hire a firm to review the matter beforehand. It was that we should get a response from staff.
And I never
So
got
I
one.
think they have met that test.
I didn't get a response. We didn't get a response from staff in this
So-
report.
We have a properly constituted motion on the floor. I apologize if this doesn't meet your satisfaction, but it is proper, it is in order, it has been moved and seconded. We've had discussion on it. And if after this is completed, it passes or fails, there still is an opportunity to make a recommendation to the staff about reviewing the matter. And so that's what I'm going to call. I see no further speakers at this time. I'm about to call the question on this matter, on the matter that's on the floor. Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? I have Councillors Murray and Forbes opposed. Okay, so the rezoning has passed second and third reading at this time. Councillor Murray, would you like to make a recommendation to staff?
Yes,
to
I would
pursue?
like to move that an independent peer review on this escarpment on Riverside West at Capilano
Okay, that the council recommends.
recommends
Yeah.
to the approving officer that an independent review be completed by BGC
I
Engineering.
think that's acceptable and in order. Is there a seconder on that motion? Seconded by Councillor Hanson?
Actually, that's right. I was just going to
Or the
point that
building
out.
inspector?
The building inspector,
Councillor
not
Hanson,
approving
secretary. Yes, your worship, but just to clarify, it is to the building inspector and it is a recommendation that this independent review take place with no expectation of that being reported back to council. It's just a recommendation that staff pursue a particular course.
No,
I don't know why
it
they
needs
wouldn't.
to come back to us. Of course it needs to come back to us.
As
It's not
Mr.
a conditionality on rezoning. Rezoning is already passed.
Mr. Milburn pointed out, that may necessarily imply going back to a new public hearing.
Okay, can I just say something? If staff recognize that there's a problem on that slope, what are they going to do? Not come and tell council?
Yeah, so
That's,
I'm going to respectfully disagree with the clerk on
Thank you.
that. I think it is fair to get the additional information, and I will do my best to get that information shared with council at the appropriate time. But it's not going to be conditional on rezoning. It would not cause a reopening of a public hearing. That matter has already been voted on, has already been passed in the matter.
That's in relation to an possible introduction of new information. That will take us back to the public hearing.
Oh, we can do it after adoption. You can introduce all the new information you want after adoption. All right,
Well, then there's a good-
there you go.
then there's a question, your worship, is when is the expectation to be reported back?
We'll discuss that, but it's been moved and seconded as is, and I'm going to call the question. I don't see any speakers on it, so I'm going to call the question on that recommendation. All in favor? Contrary minded? Yeah. Sorry, yeah. Are you in favor or opposed?
I don't know what exactly you said.
Okay, so are you opposed? Yeah, sorry, we don't have the time to go into everything all of the time, but I think that at this point, it's been understood what there's now a recommendation to staff to seek a second opinion and peer review the matter. Staff will deal with that in due time, and we'll work together on it. But it is not, there's no conditionality on the rezoning. That has already passed at second and third reading at this time. Okay. Thank you very much. Sorry, members of the public watching. Sometimes these things can get a little bit technical going back and forth, but to be clear, that matter has passed its second and third reading. Thank you very much for your input on the matter. The next item up for discussion is item 8.6. And on this, we have the updated Part 9 step code building requirements. And I actually, Mr. Wright, I guess you're going to be leading off.
I'm just going to give a brief introduction. So this report is concerning Part 9 buildings, which are typically smaller, simpler building types like houses, duplexes, and smaller townhouses. So that's really all we're talking about this evening, is just opening up potential engagement with regard to our step code regulations for Part 9 buildings. We're not talking about Part 3 buildings at all. So really, we're seeking direction to consult in potentially moving from Step 3 of the step code to Step 4 of the step code. And in doing so, we expect to increase the quality of construction, the comfort in those homes, and of course, decrease the amount of energy that's being consumed by those homes. And I might note that the district has been at Step 3 for almost 5 years, and later this year with the new BC Building Code, the Step 3 will be the minimum province-wide standard, so we'll just be no higher really than the province-wide standard. And typically on the North Shore, we've maintained a fairly good leadership position in terms of exceeding the base standard. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Mr. Wright.
Welcome.
Thank you. So staff are seeking direction from council this evening to engage with stakeholders regarding the proposed changes that would increase minimum energy efficiency levels for new homes in the District of North Vancouver. The proposed engagement and update advances the district's action area of low carbon buildings. The proposed update would apply to new Part 9 residential buildings as defined by the BC Building Code. These are generally smaller buildings, including single-family homes, coach houses, duplexes, and smaller townhome buildings. The province has recently announced building code changes that would take effect this year and will require that all new homes in BC are constructed to at least Step 3 energy efficiency levels of the BC Energy Step Code. The District of North Vancouver, along with the City of North Vancouver and the District of West Vancouver, have been requiring a minimum Step 3 energy efficiency level since 2018. Staff are seeking direction to engage with stakeholders on a proposed increase from Step 3 to Step 4 for the district's minimum energy efficiency levels for new homes. The proposed increase would allow the district to continue to support high-performance construction beyond minimum code requirements that ensures new homes in the district are efficient, healthy, and comfortable. There are existing examples of municipalities in BC that reference Step 4 as a minimum for Part 9 buildings, for example, the District of Squamish and the Village of Pemberton. The district's existing low-carbon pathway would remain to continue to provide builders the option to install low-carbon energy systems. District staff have been collaborating with staff from the District of West Vancouver and the City of North Vancouver on implementation of the BC Energy Step Code since 2017. At time of presenting, staff from the other two North Shore municipalities are seeking direction to engage on a similar approach for their respective councils' consideration. The incremental increase from Step 3 to Step 4 is recommended to maintain consistency for builders across the North Shore, to advance high-performance construction, and prepare industry for future provincial building code updates anticipated in the coming years. Should council provide direction to staff, staff would initiate stakeholder engagement and report back with proposed amendments to the district's construction bylaw later this year.
Hands would be best. Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Wright. Mayor Little has just had to step out for a moment. Will someone be willing to move the staff recommendation? Councillor Murray, and seconded by Councillor Ma. Councillor Murray, go ahead.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Back. I'm particularly interested in industry stakeholders and those that I know in engineering circles talk about different ways to achieve the step code that is not as cumbersome and expensive when looking at single family homes, duplexes. And I'm wondering what's the breadth of the reach for industry stakeholders? Where are we going?
Ms. Jack.
I know I keep looking at you, but I should be looking at you. So I'm going to look at you.
Yep.
Adam.
Thank you. Through your worship. So the specific engagement activities will be coordinated with staff from the City of North Vancouver and the District of West Vancouver. We anticipate focusing on local home builders associations, in addition to local builders, energy advisors, designers, architects, and so on.
Right. And then engineering companies as well that that are expertise in building envelopes. Is that a group that we would be reaching out to? There's a lot of there's a lot of those in the community that deal with building envelopes and energy efficiency. And I think it would be prudent for us to reach out to them as well.
Yeah, I would assume those would be included in our group.
We could include that. Just going forward, I was asking a builder the other day what it would cost, 4,500 square foot home, all the bells and whistles, finished. What would that cost to build in the District of North Vancouver? Not the land. Between $2 and $2.5 million is the cost to build a 4,500 square foot home, nice home. It's a lot of money. And with advancements in energy and how we look at things, what passive house is, I think it would be really a great idea Ms. Jackson and Mr. Wright, for us to maybe do a tour of some of these, passive house opportunities or very energy efficient homes in the Lower Mainland. There's a number of builders that are doing, great work within the district on the North Shore. I think it would be a really big eye-opening experience for us to go in these, these homes and talk about, what is the latest and greatest way of building them, and what are some ideas from those industry reps that can make building these homes as energy efficient as the step code is, but not as challenging, because I hear there's some challenges with it. And I think we've come a long way since, when you and I were starting, and Councillor Hanson, it was the lead, gold, silver, platinum. Well, that's passé, that's gone. Now it's the step code, but I think the step code might be gone too. I think there's other things that are being done within the industry that we need to take a look at and talk about it. And I'd love for us to have a forum with council so we hear this, so we understand this. I'd love to sit down with contractors and builders and understand what their challenges are. And certainly I've spoken to Mr. Cohen and Mr. Joyce about the challenges around stormwater management and those issues. We need to have a workshop on that and tie all of these things together. Our forest canopy within the urban, Councillor Hanson and I are working on a motion in regards to the urban canopy. We know that Ms. Warner is bringing forward forest resiliency. All of those things tie into stormwater, using that natural asset to deal with water. And then we're looking at the built form and how we do it in the best way possible. So I really hope that we start doing things differently in how we educate ourselves. It's a lot, as Councillor Ma pointed out, to understand a lot of these things. Several of us have a significant history at this table, and we have a lot of background. We've got some very capable new people on our team. We're losing some ones that just walked out of the room, and one's going to walk out soon. And it's a big loss for us to have this corporate memory leave. So we need to understand as much as we can too going forward. I look forward to this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Thank you, Councillor Back, for assistance.
Great job. Really.
Seconded.
Councillor Ma.
Thank you. I know that best practices are evolving. And, Councillor Murray is right. I think we'll learn a lot by touring some buildings. I have toured some sites and buildings during my time at BC Housing. And I do note that the recommendation is to direct staff to engage industry stakeholders. So I will be supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I see no further speakers at this time. Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to item 8.7. This is the application to UBCM's disaster risk reduction climate adaptation funding stream for updated coastal flood hazard maps. Klein, Ms. Atva, do you have a brief presentation on the matter? I think these things tend to be supportable, so.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Worship. Everybody's here tonight. I would like to introduce Brianne Labute, who is one of our new planners who started with the district last year. She will give us a short overview in a moment, but I would just like to say, remind council, and for the benefit of new staff, that council adopted the sea level rise strategy in 2020. There are a number of really important actions in there, which we're hoping to continue moving forward on. And also like to say that the sea level rise strategy was recognized with an award by the Community Energy Association in 2021. And this strategy was developed with our partners across the North Shore. I'd like to turn this over now with your permission to Brianne Labute.
Thank you.
Great. Am I on? I am. And being new to the district, I noted I will take a moment to introduce myself. Brianne Labute, community planner, started in November, and I am living and enjoying my life here on the North Shore. So thanks so much for having me tonight, and I really look forward to working with Mayor and Council moving forward.
Welcome.
Thank you. So one recommendation following the sea level rise strategy approved by Council in 2020 is Ms.
I'm going to press you to be about 20% louder or closer to the mic,
Sure.
one or the other. Thank
No
you.
problem. New people problems. Is that better?
That's okay.
So one of those recommendations was to conduct wave modeling and updated flood hazard maps for the eastern portion of the district. This would support public safety and awareness and inform potential measures to adapt to climate-related hazards. So our current flood hazard maps that were prepared as part of the sea level rise strategy did not consider waves that are generated by the wind, which can enhance those coastal flood and erosion risks. And why we would be interested in doing these updated maps is to inform the creation of a coastal development permit area, and that would be an implementing action of the OCP action plan. So UBC funding is available to support this work. Therefore, the council, or the recommendation is that council supports an application to the Union of BC Municipalities, UBCM, Disaster Risk Reduction and Climate Adaptation Funding Stream for updated flood hazard maps for coastal lands from the road allowance immediately west of the 3700 block Dollarton Highway to the northeastern point of the district in Indian Arm. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other comments from staff? No? Okay, so Councillor Murray, you are moving the recommendation, is that correct?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Okay, is there a seconder for the matter? Seconded by Councillor Pope. Councillor Murray, your comments?
So I'm just wondering, and I think we probably need a review on the risk assessment, just because we have a new council, and I think it's really important to spend a little bit more time, you know, bringing these things that we haven't talked about for a while and updating all of us, refreshing all of us with some of these things. You guys do this all day long. You know how to find them. I, you know, can't. So I think it's really important that we look at some time to update ourselves. But can you tell me why we don't start until this 3700 block? Because we do have the Tsleil-Waututh Nation, and I'm not sure if they wouldn't be partners in applying for this grant funding stream, because they are directly impacted by waves where they are. Also, the Maplewood mudflats, the impact to that shoreline, and how that would affect Maplewood. I'm a little bit surprised that wave action coming up the Seymour into Maplewood is that storm surge is significant. And we've seen what happened a year and a half ago in the district of West Vancouver at Ambleside Park. It went over to the soccer field, up a beach, across, and over to the other side of the road. So I'm just wondering why we don't start until then, especially when that's at the top of a hill.
Please.
Through your worship, to Councillor Murray. Really great question. There's a couple of reasons why we chose that specific area. One being that it was a knowledge gap that was identified in the sea level rise strategy. So the district of West Vancouver and that area of Indian Arm. And that's partly because some wave analysis work has been done in the other areas as part of a 2013 floodplain study. And then the other piece to, well, there's a couple more pieces. The other being that all the other areas on the district coastline were identified in the sea level rise strategy as comprehensive adaptation planning zones. So those areas, Maplewood would be an example of one of them, where there's going to need to be some more detailed adaptation planning and analysis that occurs to determine what the approach would be. That was done at a very high level through the sea level rise strategy. And lastly, the reason why this area was prioritized to be part of the first coastal development permit is because of the nature of the land uses. So it's mostly residential, a little bit of commercial, and some park uses. And those can primarily be kind of addressed at an individual property level. So maybe opposed to at a community level where you're going to have to look at raising the lands or dikes or some other more complicated approaches. On these particular lands, it's usually the adaptations can be done on that specific property. For example, maybe you could elevate the building a little bit higher, or you could move it a bit further back. So that's why this very specific area has been identified just as the first step in this process. But as you highlighted, there's much more work to be done along the rest of the district coastline.
All right, thank you. I do think that we need a workshop on this sooner than later, especially as we look at reviewing the Maplewood plan, the work and the plans that the Tsleil-Waututh have on the Dollarton. Last year, the old Dollarton flooded. Even the new area by Stong's, which Stong's has been raised, there was water on that floor, on that road. We have huge industrial sites that go, you know, to the ocean that are at all different levels. Huge amounts of water could come up. And I do think that we need to understand, sort of long-term. There's an example of a building, and I do not know if this is actually a survey company that exists in the Dollarton Business Park, just behind Darwin's offices off Forster. And it is actually built on stilts like you would build in the Gulf Coast. Their parking is at grade, is where their parking lot is, and then they climb a set of stairs to go up to their offices. That is what we should be looking at down there. Instead of, I mean, right now we've got big warehouses, right? So, but we've also got offices in that area. And I think that we know that this is going to get worse. And mitigation, we had an engineer who's no longer with us who said that we can't hold back Mother Nature anymore. We think we can, but the costs are going to be astronomical, and the insurance is going to be worse than that. This is the challenge, and we've seen what's happened in Abbotsford. Insurance companies will no longer insure buildings that are built like we've been doing, and like I think we're going to continue to do in the future. And I think we all really need to understand that and get our heads wrapped around that, because I think there's a reckoning coming. So thank you for your work. I look forward to this, but I will request through Mr. Wardell to Mr. Stewart that we have a workshop on this and an update on the whole plan within the District of North Vancouver. Thank you.
Well done. Councillor Pope, you seconded. Do you have additional comments?
Okay, how weird. I just want to add that I do support this. It is absolutely critical that as a district, we stay on top of flood hazard mapping and that we're aware of what we're facing, because as we know, climate change is here and the flooding situation is very likely going to get immensely worse. And I also really like the idea of public engagement, because I think it's important for the public to understand as well what we're in store for and what we can do to mitigate it, and that there will be costs associated with that. So that's really all I have to say, but thank you very much.
I was just going to add a couple comments of my own. There are very few buildings that I can think of in that area that would probably be with even the 100-year limit, just because it gets so steep so fast in most of the areas that are east of the starting point. I can think of there's the house that was falling into the water, obviously the one there would be obviously the canoe and kayak shop potentially, but the one that you definitely see a problem with storm issues is the docks themselves. And so I remember West Point got cleared out. There was a storm that came out and it ripped one dock off, and that dock had the knock-on effect of ripping off all the neighbors' docks, and they started showing up all over Indian Arm as they would float around in the storm. And so, maybe specifically we're also going to have to look at that kind of infrastructure, not just simply businesses or houses per se, but I think within that zone, overwhelmingly, the built pieces are docks. And most of the houses in that area, because of the steep drop off or Parcel B or other areas throughout that portion, the houses are already set back at least a meter above sea level in those areas to multiple. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking through it, but it'd be interesting to go and take a tour of it. But I think the only boat the district owns is a 14-foot John boat, and I don't think we could fit the council in it. But it'd be good to go and take a look at the potential areas that this might impact. But I'll be supportive of it. Once again, I think the district has been very effective in applying to the UBCM in order to be able to get disaster response dollars through grants. And so I'm very supportive of us continuing that relationship with the Union of BC Municipalities. I see no further speakers at this time. I'm prepared to call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? The motion carries. Thank you very much for your presentation. Next, we have Councillor Jordan Back's a council motion for the Delbrook Road design. And so I'm going to go to Councillor Back if you want to have some opening comments on the matter. And is there, and
Sure.
we'll have to identify a seconder as well. Seconded by Councillor Murray. Go ahead, Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much. So this report is fairly self-explanatory. As we heard from the speakers here tonight, speeding along the Delbrook Avenue corridor, and I do apologize for the typos in the report. Obviously, it's Delbrook Avenue we're referring to, go back many years. And there have been some upgrades over the years, and I do want to thank staff, but clearly they have not been effective in making this a safe corridor for anyone who's not in a vehicle. Thank you to Mr. Gorley for making a personal kind of connection to what makes a safe road corridor. You know, and I think about my two kids and walking along there, cycling along there, would I feel safe? And I think the answer is very clear that I wouldn't. The rate at which cars travel through Delbrook is just consistently fast and getting faster, as was pointed out. It's largely an engineering issue. The road is too wide. As a result, people drive faster than they should. We did review this at our road safety program workshop back in the spring, which I think there was a number of concerns raised by council at that point, and the expectation was that that would be coming back to another workshop. While this corridor may not rank at the top of the list in terms of the metric that was laid out in that program, I think we need to take another look at those metrics. I really think that we should be striving to create a strategy that eliminates all traffic fatalities and severe injuries while increasing the safe, healthy, and equitable mobility for everyone, regardless of how they're getting around. So really what I'm asking in this report is for staff to look specifically at the Delbrook corridor and what engineering and road design options for enhanced safety can be made and come back with some specific recommendations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, your comments?
Thank you. And I, you know, obviously I support this motion. I think there's a disconnect with what we as councillors here in the community, who we are talking to in the community, and how we're achieving the concerns that our residents and our businesses are bringing forward to us. And we've applied a policy-driven level of decision-making that obviously you need to have good policy. But there also has to be an ability for us to be flexible and to trust that our residents who see these roads operate every single day, there's got to be a level of trust that we put in our residents and ourselves as residents in the community, and for our staff that are residents in the community, seeing how these are operating. And I'm going to give you an example. Mr. Cohen, is Strathcona one of the 129 arterial corridors that's included in the top 20 corridors in the district? Did I put you on the spot?
Pop quiz.
Probably. I bring it up enough. You can look while I talk.
Will do.
The reason I bring up Strathcona is because of what Councillor Back put in this report, that Delbrook is a super wide road. It's almost like the width of a parkway if you took out the median. Like, it is a wide road. The average speed on the parkway is 80. It's not 60, it's 80. And that's the slow guys driving it, right? And we're all guilty of it because it's
white Honda pilots.
It's a fast road, right? But Strathcona, if you know Strathcona from Deep Cove Road, it's a collector road. And there are 3 tiny little streets that collect onto it. It is a windy country road that for years never had sidewalks, nothing. It has an S-turn in it. And when you come out of the S-turn, it's also got, you go down a hill, you come around a corner, there's a crosswalk for a high school. Then you drive down it again. It was like the Le Mans track when you had a Datsun in the 1970s at night at 3 a.m. Guys would drive around it, right? You go around corners, you hit S-turns, and then you come out and you speed up a hill, another tight corner and down Cove Cliff. That is also considered a collector road and is categorized the same as Delbrook, which I find absolutely stunning because they're 2 of the most opposite kinds of roads. And the residents down there have been asking in that little S-turn sharp corner area where you decline and then go up an incline, have requesting 30 kilometers down there, and we won't do it. And I am going to bring a motion forward and request that we put 30 kilometers down there to give people an indication that you need to slow down. I made a comment a while ago that got picked up in the newspaper about the Edgemont discussion about the luxury cars. The change of a drive of a car makes it feel different when you're driving that car. Driving my clunky Pilot is quite different than driving a luxury Mercedes, for instance. It's a lot smoother. You do not feel the speed. And there's a lot more of those luxury cars on the roads right now. And I think we're also distracted by phones and all sorts of other things. I think we have to take back our neighborhoods. I think our neighborhoods understand what's going on better than we do sometimes. And I want good policy to drive how we manage our municipality. But I also want us to make sure that those that are living and witnessing what is going on in their neighborhoods is something that we can do to support them and address those issues. I don't think putting a speed table for a crosswalk on Delbrook is the end of the world. City of North Vancouver has run speed bumps all the way down 15th, and I guess the transit bus drivers didn't like it, but they all live with it. I'm not suggesting that we do that on Delbrook, but I think we could narrow the roads, and I think we could also put speed tables at those crosswalks that Mr. Parslow's been working so hard to put in place, and those crossings that we've put in as well. So I look forward to staff coming back, but I also want us to have another one of those workshops to talk about pedestrian, cycling, and safe streets. I think there's some work that we could do in regards to our Safe Streets program around schools. And I think that we should increase the funding for that work. I think too often staff have to come back. And I think they should just be able to implement that kind of thing. But I think there's some roads around our community that operate differently than how they're classified. And I think we need to look at that. What's the answer to my question, Mr. Cohen? I have 1 minute and 21 seconds left.
No worries. So through the mayor, so we have 129 collectively collectors and arterials across the district. Strathcona is defined as a collector, so it is on the list. And
In the top 20?
It is, Strathcona is between 80 and 90.
8 and 19.
80 and 90.
Oh,
it's quite-
80 and 90.
So it's
There you
quite
go.
low on the list.
Yeah.
Quite low on the list. And Delbrook's defined as a minor arterial.
Delbrook is defined as a minor arterial and Strathcona is a major?
No, a collector.
Oh, a collector. Oh, okay, okay. Phew. Okay, yeah, I think when they were classified, those roads, I think, when were they classified, Mr. Joyce? When you first started as a young engineer?
Your worship, the roads are classified as locals collectors, minor arterials and arterials, and they're based on the volumes that the roads experience. So the higher the volumes, pedestrians and also vehicles, and that forms the district's classification system. So locals feed into collectors, collectors feed into minor arterials, and your major arterials take you down to the highway system.
And when was the last time we reclassified any of those roads? I remember we did it one year.
Well, you're probably recalling John Bremner, and at that point it came to council as a classification map and it was signed off by council. That's not something we do anymore, but we are always looking at the road system and the classifications of the road.
Yeah.
But earlier on to your point, I mean, if this Councillor Back's motion is accepted, staff would be happy to report back in. And frankly, there are, if you want to have a discussion around safety, there are things to talk about.
Yeah.
I heard this evening about crosswalks. Crosswalks are some of the most dangerous places
Yeah.
for children to cross.
Yes.
Because of drivers.
Sense of security.
Thank you, Councillor Mary. So you'll see some of our crosswalks we removed and we put stop and look as you step off the curb, as opposed to white lines where you've taught your children just to cross at the white lines and putting all the onus on the pedestrian, which unfortunately with the driver pedestrian conflict, they're the ones that come out the loser. So there's things like that that would come into why we make decisions we make, and we'd be happy to share that with you.
We need to look at our pedestrian master plan, cycling, and our streets, and we need to have a conversation with our new engineers to understand what those concerns are for us and our community, because we are directly connected to the community with our jobs, right?
Now over your 6 minutes, Councillor Murray.
Oh,
yes.
I was doing so well.
Okay, next I have Councillor Pope.
Well, I live in that area in Delbrook, and I have been commuting up and down to first Braemar with my daughter and now Handsworth, so I'm on it all the time. So when I first met Bev Parcel last August, and you told me that you've been fighting for this for such a long time, I was absolutely flabbergasted that actually nothing had happened. Because I'm well aware of just, my own experience of how fast people go down there. And I was just driving it today and I thought, yeah, it's almost impossible not to speed on this stretch of road because it's just so, it just goes and it feels, I don't know the reasons, but at any rate, I don't drive a luxury car. So that's not it. But yeah, I totally support this motion. I think that we can do a lot better there, and I'm very happy to hear back on what kinds of options can happen to slow the traffic down. Shouldn't be that hard, and it shouldn't be that expensive, one wouldn't think. So it's completely reasonable, and its time certainly has come. And I also just wanted to commend Bev Parslow for your relentless advocacy work for this. It's impressive, and I'm very happy to support you in this.
Thank you, Councillor Pope. Councillor Ma.
He was like that as my teacher too, relentless.
Similar to Councillor Pope, I want to thank some of the residents for their ongoing advocacy of this issue. And I will defer to the expertise of our engineering staff. And at the same time, I would suggest that public input and speed analysis be considered when assessing road safety. I support the need to move forward on making our community safer, so I will support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to support it. And I'd like to specifically thank Councillor Back for bringing this forward. It's an issue that has been around this council for quite some time. I obviously respect the work of Bev Parslow and others in the community. And I appreciate the fact that Councillor Back envisioned this way of breaking this particular log jam. And I thank you for that. I'm very pleased to support. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Back, you wanted to speak a second time?
Just to say thank you to my colleagues for your support. And of course, I didn't acknowledge Mr. Bev Parslow, but thank you for all your years of advocacy. And I'm glad that we've got support to finally move something forward. Thank you.
Okay, and just for my own comments, I will be supporting the motion, although I do have some comments that I always raise when we talk about traffic calming in neighborhoods is watching for the unintended consequences. So there are a lot of, I grew up driving on those streets. I grew up by Mount Royal and Delbrook and learned to drive in that neighborhood. And I know every little nook and cranny. And if you make it too slow along that upper Delbrook part, you're going to see people going either from Seville, you can cut up to Glen Canyon over at Mount Royal using the side streets. You can, from Evergreen and Mahan, you can avoid the Delbrook and Westview transition there. From Madeley and Cartelier, you can skip the corner up to Mount Royal. I'm not saying this to give tips out amongst the community, but to say that you can have the unintended consequence of pushing more rat runners onto these side streets who, as much as we're concerned about the safety along the Delbrook corridor, these places cannot handle additional capacity. And so we have to be mindful of what the spillover impact is going to be on these alternate routes to the area. I think that it goes beyond Delbrook. We're talking about Delbrook because I know Bev's been a tireless advocate for Delbrook and for Mount Royal in some spaces as well. But the reality is, this is happening all across our municipalities on all of our major arterials. It's a culture problem, and we've talked about that before. It's very challenging to build your way out of this kind of a culture problem where people don't understand the risks when they approach a pedestrian crosswalk next to an elementary school, when they follow each other too close, when they're side-eye checking their cell phone to see what messages may have come in, and they're just generally distracted, far too distracted for somebody who's in a 2 to 5 ton vehicle cruising through that corridor, particularly on the downhills. And so it goes beyond Delbrook. Delbrook is a minor arterial, but you could have the exact same discussion on Lonsdale, as was noted in the input, Cap Road, Berkeley, Mountain Highway specifically. I got to tell you, as bad as the stats have been from Bev over the years, I guarantee you'll get worse stats on the lower half of Mountain Highway, and our RCMP have said as much, where when they do a speed check below 18th and Mountain Highway, they typically grant almost 30 kilometers because otherwise they'd be pulling over every single vehicle going down the hill. And so we have other areas that are also hot spots by priority. I'm supportive of this going forward, but I think that it needs to inform a broader discussion about our arterial and minor arterial roads and what kind of policies we're going to set going forward. Maybe we would be at least partially as effective if we engaged in a public campaign to talk about the culture issue in our community and address that issue as well. Because I think what I'm worried about is that this is going to just move more traffic onto alternatives. If you're above Mount Royal and it's now faster to go down Highlands to get to the highway, you're going to go down Highlands, or you're going to take the Mount Royal connector over and go down Lonsdale instead. And so I think we need to have the broader discussion about culture as well in it. But I thank Councillor Back for bringing the motion forward, and Bev Parcel for your tireless efforts in this area. Look forward to seeing what staff recommend out of this. At this point, I see no further speakers on the matter. I'll call the question. All in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Sorry, Councillor. I have to train someone else on the side door.
They're vacuuming, and maybe you need to make a note of vacuuming times in the hallway when we have council meetings.
Move it to the middle position.
I can't reach.
Yeah, that was my job when I sat in that chair. That was the job.
Doing anything.
It will. Oh, is it push close too?
Oh, there we go. Okay.
There you go.
It comes in handy that he's got home.
That was my job when I was seated over in that corner, right? So, okay, Council, we've moved on to item 8.9. This is the UBCM resolution, rights of tenants facing displacement through redevelopment. Councillor Miri, is your
Moved.
motion?
Yeah.
You're moving. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconder on the matter, seconded by Councillor Back. And your comments, Councillor Miri?
Thank you. I think Ms. Bond actually was far more eloquent than I could ever be in regards to her opening statements. I spoke to her several times in regards to this resolution because of her advocacy in regards to tenant displacement and her work on our affordable housing task force. So we worked on this together with Adrienne Ryer, our council assistants. And I'm gonna, I think Ms. Bond has laid out sort of the details of the motion, but I'm gonna just tell a little story. And it's about, over the years, we've dealt with many demo evictions, and Miss Bond's family was one of those demo evicted from Emery Place. And most recently, we had an example of two seniors in our community, and Councillor Pope was assisting in this situation. Two seniors, both on a pension, with a son and who had a dog, living in a house for 15 years down on Marie Place off of Mountain Highway. And the property was sold. There were several houses on the street that were sold. And the developer came in, and through our trap policy, we requested that the developer assist residents in finding places to live, which is a policy that will be the subject of another motion that is coming forward to make some amendments. And Ms. Bond spoke about Burnaby's policy that we're looking at. And so this family lived in a house next door for 15 years and paid $1,800 a month for this house. Then it was sold, and the developer moved them from that house next door. They had to sign a contract, and the rent went up to $2,400 a month. Two women on a pension. Our policy requested that the developer provide basically Craigslist ads. And I'm a renter right now. I was in the housing market for 20 years, and due to a change in my family circumstance, I am now a renter, trying to get back into the housing market as an owner. It is very, very challenging, particularly as a single person. And I would also say as a woman, it is very challenging. So these two sisters and a son and a dog began to get Craigslist ads. And when they went to the rental properties that were being provided to them, there was a big lineup in front of them. Now, as a landlord, two seniors on a pension, a son and a dog, or a couple, both professional, fully employed, who are you going to pick? Right? It's obvious. So they were pushing a rock up a hill. And through phone calls and me being very frustrated, Ms. Bond runs a Facebook page and is a consummate advocate for people that are being displaced. We were all doing, Councillor Pope was reaching out to staff as well. We were all doing whatever we could to try to delay this eviction that was coming in the beginning of the year. And there was money that was given from the developer. I'll take my other 2 minutes. There was money that was coming for the developer for moving expenses, but it's just really not sufficient anymore with the cost of moving. I was quoted to move one way, $3,500. One way. That wasn't unloading. That was just loading and getting it to the door of the next place. So we have a challenge there. Anyway, ultimately, what happened to this family was the son found a place for his mother to go. His aunt was, luckily, we found a place for her up in the New Kiwanis and was able to put her in there. She also had some mobility challenges. And the son found a rental place in the city of North Vancouver that is going to be torn down next year because it's up for redevelopment. And because she's a tenant moving into the building, wasn't displaced by the original development, there will be no compensation given to her. And in 1 year, she will find herself right back in the same scenario. Now, we are to lift up in this council, I believe. We are to lift up the most vulnerable. And when we do that, everybody else rises up. And over the years, some decisions, this council has not made those decisions, but previous councils have made decisions to displace those most vulnerable people in our community. And it is not a badge that we should be proud of. We should be horrified by some of the decisions in the past. Residents that lived at Emery, the vast majority of them will not be coming back to the district. When you leave your community and after 5 years, 6 years, 8 years of a development being built and it's still not even half finished, it's very challenging to be able to come back and start all over again. moving is expensive, finding doctors and dentists when you've lived in a community for 40 years and you push them out because of development that is not necessarily ever going to be for them. We need to have a discussion about that too, and how we move forward with these development applications, because there are lots of buildings that are owned by developers, and the speculation that continues is very hard on those people that have kept this community together. They are the thread that holds it together, and I hope that the UBCM, the LMFGA, and the provincial government understand the impact of displacement, because it is going to impact us all very, very negatively in the future.
Okay.
Thank
you
you.
very much, Councillor Miri. And I believe the seconder, Councillor Back. I did just want to insert something here about this. So just for clarity, the Lower Mainland Local Government Association is, because I don't think we've really talked about it specifically publicly before with the new council, is an area association that includes Metro Vancouver mayors and councils, Fraser Valley mayors and councils, and directors, and also Squamish-Lillooet Regional District mayors, councils, and directors. And they all come together for an annual conference. They support a variety of resolutions that get forward onto the Union of BC Municipalities, which is the mayors, councils, and area association directors for the entirety of the province to have their consideration. So this is doing is it's forwarding this to the LMLGA for discussion. If it's endorsed by the LMLGA, then the LMLGA would forward it then on to the Union of BC Municipalities event in the fall, typically at the tail end of September, for consideration and recommendation to the province of BC.
And I think several of us are attending the LMLGA.
It's an excellent local conference.
You're going?
Very supportive of it. Councillor Back, thank you for seconding it. Okay, any other, Councillor Ma, your comments?
Oh my God.
Almost got it. Well, it's still working. First, thank you, Council.
Technical difficulty.
First, thank you, Councillor Murray, for bringing this forward. I too want to ensure that our policies preserve the sense of community in the district. During my time at BC Housing, we were very concerned about displacing existing residents when we purchased properties for development. That was a major consideration. But I also have to think about Mayor Little's comments on the previous motion. We don't want to end up with unintended consequences with some of our policies. I think this motion strikes a balance between the realities of our current housing market, where additional requirements may add cost to a project, which could result in higher prices or rent. But overall, I agree with the general principle of this resolution, and I will support it. Thank you.
Much. I don't see any further speakers on the matter, so I'm going to call a question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council, for completing the business of the meeting. We do actually have a little bit of time. It's been a while since we've had some reports. The only report that I'm going to be adding to the meeting today is a little bit of a sad one. As a friend of ours, Bob Fernley, one of the former councillors of the City of North Vancouver, passed away tragically with his daughter Gail in their home on Delbrook. A shock and tragic result of the fire in their house. We did attend, myself and Councillor Murray did attend the funeral on Saturday, and passed along our condolences directly to Via, Bob's wife, and also Paulo and Bob Jr., the other family members there. Bob was a good friend, and a number of times he actually even put my sign out on his lawn as he was a district resident, even though he was a council candidate. but he was a crusty guy sometimes. You knew where you stood. Bob would always tell you whether he agreed with you or he disagreed with you. But then you got to know him and you realize he had a huge heart and he was volunteering all over the community. He had areas that he just felt absolutely committed to and spent all of his extra time advancing those issues. And it certainly, in the funeral, you saw its impact on his kids, who all recognized that he was there to serve the community. And I think as people in public office, it causes you some self-reflection to see how your kids would envision you. And I got to tell you that seeing how those kids admired their dad made me very proud of my friend Bob for the work that he did in the community, but also how he supported his family through all of those years. My favorite memory of him will be at the FCM. I think we were in Toronto, and actually further, we were in Halifax. And he was on the FCM executive. He had been on the LMLG executive and UBCM executive. He was on the FCM executive at that time. And there was a hospitality suite, and he got behind the bar and just wanted to make sure everybody had a great time chatting with everybody and just having a ton of fun. And you really saw his personality come through. And I definitely will be remembering those times with my friend Bob. So on behalf of the Council of the District of North Vancouver, our condolences to the Fernley family. Their loss is felt by many people in this community. Councillor Ma, you have a report?
I trust the staff. On Saturday, February 25th, Councillor Pope back and some of our council colleagues from the city participated in the inaugural CODIS Night of the Year on the North Shore. It was a walk organized by Habitat for Humanities, and it was this it's raising awareness and funds for people that are unhoused. So it was perfect. Snow was falling as we were walking our long walk. So it was all good. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Forbes, you have a report, or that was because you were sitting in Councillor Forbes' seat? There you go. Okay. Would anybody else on council like to make a report tonight? Okay, thank you all so much for participating in this evening's meeting. Thank you to the staff for preparing the reports under consideration tonight. Thank you to members of the public for sticking with us and sharing their comments. Have a fantastic week, and we look forward to seeing you at future public meetings. Thank you. Have a good night.